Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In this section, we will talk about 7.5, which is multidimensional arrays. And we will start with how to declare two-dimensional array. So as a starting point, if we have a statement that says create two-dimensional array of 2 rows and 3 columns, which is something similar to the table we have here. So I have 2 rows and the index always starts from 0. So I have 0 and 1. And then for each row we have 3 columns. And as usual, always we start with 0. So 0, 1 and 2. The syntax of declaration of this table is integer. And then we should have 2 brackets. The name of the two-dimensional array equal new integer, and then between the brackets we have to specify how many columns and how many rows we need. So the first number 2 is specifying how many rows. The second number 3 is specifying how many columns. Now, as soon as this statement is executed, so you will have your table. You will have 2 rows, and always the first row starts with 0. And for each row you will have 3 columns, and for each and always the columns start with 0 as well. Now, how to access two-dimensional array and how to access the values? Always we have to use the row and the column index. So for example, if I need to go to table, which is my two-dimensional array, at location 0 and 0 equals 100, it means for this table two-dimensional array, for location 0 and location 0, which is row 0 and column 0. And then we have to save the value, and the value will be as 100. So this is the initial value we have as 100. So always the first number should represent the row number, and the second one should represent the column index. Now similarly, if we have another statement that says in your two-dimensional array table, and location 1 and 2, location 1, so this is location 1, which is row 1, and location 2, which means column 2, the value we have to save is 200, so we will save the value 200 on this location. And similarly, we can do calculation of values within the two-dimensional array. So if we have a statement as follow, it says table 0 and 0, so table 0 and 0, the value inside this location is 100, so this is the value 100, plus 1, which is 101. It needs to be saved in location 1 and 1. So location 1 and 1, it means we have to save the value here as 101. So always the rule of creating two-dimensional array is you have to specify the data type, 2 brackets, the name of your two-dimensional array. And then you have to create the new dimensional array, and you have to specify how many rows you have. So this is the number of rows, and also you have to specify how many columns. So if we have, for example, between a bracket 4 and 4, it means 4 rows and 4 columns. And always remember the rule, always with your two-dimensional array, always rows will start from 0 and always columns will start from 0 as well. In order to access your data inside two-dimensional array, always you need in which row and in which column. That's why here we mentioned if I have to go to my table at location 0 at location 0, so this is location 0 and 0, and then we have to save the value inside that element. Now the second thing we will deal with is initializing two-dimensional array. Assume we have the following statement which says integer brackets table equal new integer 2 and 3. So this is similar to the statement we had before, which means we are creating a table, and the table will consist of 2 rows and 3 columns. That's why I'm having here 2 rows and we are having 3 columns. Now if the question is saying you need to initialize your two-dimensional array, all of the elements inside your two-dimensional array should have the value 100, then we can do it as follows. I can go one by one, step by step, and initialize the values. So we can just mention, go to my table at location 0 and 0, and we can save the value 100. So this is location 0 and 0, and the value will be an 100. Similarly, go to location 0 and 1. So this is location 0 again, but I'm talking about column 1, and here we should have 100. And then again the same row 0, but column 2. So this is column 2, and the value will be 100. So within the same row, we went for each column and then we saved the value 100. Similarly, now we will go to the other row, which is 1 and 0. So this is row 1 and column 0. We should have 100. And then we have 1 and 1 and 1 and 2. So this is row 1 and 1, which is 100. Row 1 and 2, which is 100 as well. By the end of these 6 statements, we will initialize our two-dimensional array to 100. But actually, can be summarized as follows. If you notice that we have the same statement that is repeated, so always I have to mention that this is the name of the table. I should have 2 brackets, and then I should have equal 100. And then between these 2 brackets, we are having 2 numbers, which row and which column. And the first time we said you have to go to row 0, and then changing the column 0, 1, 2, and then go to row 1, and then you have to change the columns again 0, 1, and 2. So we can summarize it as follow. If we have 2 variables, I and j, I will represent which row, so I will have I here, so this is the row number, and the second one will be as j. So when I is 0, I should go with the elements 0, 1, and 2. If the I is 1, which is the second row, I have to go with the column 0, 1, and 2. Now we have to put this one into for loop, just like what we did with one-dimensional array in a previous session. So we have to deal with it as follows. Because I need I and j, so that's why we need nested loop. The first loop, the outer loop for I, and the inner loop for j. The first loop for each row, the second loop for each column. So we have the statement, it says here as follow. You should have a for loop. I should start from 0, I should go up to table.length, and I plus plus. I starting from 0 because my rows always in my array starts from 0. So I should have the initial value of I as 0. And then table.length, this will represent how many elements you have, how many rows you have. So here, when we say table.length, this is representing how many rows we have, which is having the value as 2. And then this is with the first loop. The second loop, j should start from 0. Again, similarly, always columns in any table will start from 0. So that's why we need to start from 0. We have to go up to the number of columns. So we have to mention table bracket I dot length. This is representing how many columns in our declaration, which is having the number as a 3. And then we have j plus plus as well. Inside the loop, we have the statement that says table I and j equals 100, which is the similar we did in our example. So let's do a tracing, and let's do a finding of the elements once we go with I and j, and then we can have the initialization of our two-dimensional array. So we will start with the following. Now I equals 0, so this is I equals 0, which means currently we are at the first row. Currently we are at row 0 of our two-dimensional array. Now the condition says I should be less than table.length, which means currently I is 0, 0 should be less than 2. So this is a true. We'll have to go inside, and then inside I have another loop, which is j. J again should start from 0. So j, this is the current value of j. So it means now this is j. So I'm having I, this is my row, and j, this is the column. Now j should be less than table I dot length, which means the value of j should be less than 3, and this is true. once you start the execution of the statements inside, it says table I and j, so table 0 and 0 equals 100. 0 and 0 equals 100. It means we will save 100 in the first location. Now we are in the j loop. This is the inner loop, so it means we'll have to start j from the beginning again. We have to go with the second iteration, and we have to do j plus plus. J plus plus, it means we have to go to the second j, so now j should be 2, which means now j is moving to the second location, and this is j and this time. Is the value still within table I dot length? This is true. 1 less than 3. This is fine. Once you have your statement which says I and j, I is still the same value, which is row 0, but j will be changing and it should have the value 1. So 0 and 1, and we will save the value as 100. Now go to the second iteration as well. Increment j, j should be 2. So this will be the last value of j as well, which means now j should be at this location. And now once you execute your statement, 2 less than 3, inside it row I and j, so 0 and 2, 0 and 2 should have the value as 100. And then again you will go back, you will increment j, and the value of j this time will be as a 3. 3 less than 3, this is false, which means you will have to stop the j loop. You will have to stop the inner loop. But once you stop the inner loop, remember, still we are in the boundary of the first loop. So it means we'll have to go to the first, our outer loop, and we have to do the calculation and the execution again. So again, we will have to do it in this way. I should go back, and the value of I will be incremented. So the value of I will be now as 1. And this means we are moving to the second row. So always you are moving row at a time. So I will be 1. And this means if we just move the row of the I now is 1. 1 is it less than the length, which is 2. This is true. And then we will go inside. J will start from 0. So this is my j. And you will notice now that j will go back from the beginning. So j will move from the beginning of the columns. And then I will have the value of j should be less than table I dot length, which is 3, the number of columns. Inside the j loop, we have I and j, so 1 and 0. So go to your table, location 1 and 0, and the value should be as 100. And then the same thing just we did with the first row, we will repeat it with the second row. So we will go with j and keep incrementing. So j will be moving to the second column, and we will save the value as 100. And then j again will move to the third column, and we will save the value as 100. Once you are done with j, and you will go back, you increment I, and I will be 2. 2, it means this is the end of your loop. So the idea behind two-dimensional array for reading, for output, for initialization, always you will need nested loop. And why we need nested loops? Because we have rows and columns. So I have a loop for each row, and I have another loop for each column. So always I will start my loop for the rows with I equals 0, because our rows starting from 0. Similarly, inside it we need another loop for j equals 0, because columns start from 0 as well. We have to go up to the number of rows and up to the number of columns, which means I have to say table.length. This will represent how many rows we have, and table I.length will represent how many columns we have. So in our example, this will be 2, and number of columns will be 3. And of course, you can just have the number of rows and columns, just like hard coding. So you can say I is less than 2, or you can just mention I less than 3, and this is fine as well. Now inside the j loop, our main aim was we need to initialize them to 100. So I'll have to go to my array, which we are calling it as table, and location I and location j. I represent in which row, j will represent in which column, and then we just save a number. And we will just use this concept for also doing an output, reading values, calculating maximum, minimum, or having an average of our values in two-dimensional array.